What is up, y'all? My name is Brandon. I got a book review for you today. Let's talk about North Woods by Daniel Mason. What's really interesting about this book is that it grounds you in a place and then it lets waves of time wash over that place like waves upon the shore. Lets you see the changes that happen, the animals and the people passing through an area and changing it themselves, simultaneously being changed by the place itself. Then there, in the room of her empty house, or the archives of the library, where one could still find such forgotten equipment, they would watch the screen light up before them. Robin, sapling, eternal beetle, the images stripped of all their prior meanings, signifying nothing but the gentle motions of a forest that no longer was. This novel is an excavation, geological, generational look at what happens to a place over time. You start 200 plus years in the past, and you really see that the beginning of this forest, which begins as an apple orchard. And over time, people buy the land, they let the apple orchard kind of fall to ruin, and then it's bought again, and then sold, and then you see little hints throughout the book of the past of this place. And I think that's part of the beauty of it, the callbacks that it has, that sometimes are just there to refer you to the past, and sometimes have a deeper meaning that give you an insight into what actually was happening with that place. There's a quote early in the book that says, "History haunts him who does not honor it." And I love this quote because it really points the reader to what the goal of this all needs to be by the end of the book. Without spoiling anything for anybody, it really is about honoring history and honoring the paths that we take in order to get to our end goal. The present of a place mimics its history with all its ghostly qualities, and its future is whispered to it by the wind. But everything in this novel about the time situation of this place comes together to form a place that is almost outside of time. It's eternal, really nostalgic in the way that we don't really realize it until we read it over and over again. There's another quote very early in the book that says, "The secret they learned was that they just needed to keep going to find the winding paths converge again." And I think that is one of the, if not the most important quote in the entire novel, because it really is unique with how the sections of this book interact with each other. There are poems, there are straightforward narrative sections, there are real estate listings, and then there are kind of like interview snippets. It brings all of them together, despite the fact that one may be confused by taking each one individually. That is not the goal. The goal is to get to the end. The goal is to keep going to find where they converge. And that's a beautiful sentiment when you get to the end of this novel and you realize what the author's goal has been the entire time. I will say that sometimes you get comfortable in a certain storyline that Mason has fallen into, and then as soon as you get comfortable, he switches it up and goes into something else, and honestly maybe even a different form or structure. So that's why I think that this quote is so important, because not only is it referring to the characters in the book, but it's metafictional in how it reaches into the reader and suggests to you almost to just keep going and find the paths that are going to converge at some point. You see these crisscrossing paths over and over again throughout the whole story by just a sentence here and there that connect back to something that you read earlier. Another major theme is thinking of the afterlife. This is done through zooming out on this place in time and seeing it through different periods of time, seeing it through the deaths of people who lived there once before. I'll read another quote here. "She had no true interest in the afterlife, except that she was a person whose hunger for the world was greater than what the world provided. Transcendence lay in theater, pantomime, burlesque." I think the key word in that quote is transcendence. How does a place transcend, or rather, how do people themselves transcend and become remembered as something more than just a being? And I think the answer comes because of place itself. This place in the North Woods that has transcended generations that have came before it. But is that what an afterlife is? a performative itching for part of life that we know is there, but it's so fleeting that we feel like we must try to capture it. And by doing so, we become immortal. We sustain our legacy throughout history. Now, history is such a broad topic, but I think Mason really allows you to form kind of a dichotomy of history in your mind while you read this. One of those is this transcendent history, this unseen, almost like a legacy type of history. And then you have another history of physical existence and what happens in life as history, which is what we generally think of when we think of the topic of history. We think of what happened in years past. And I think that coalescing those two ideas of history is an incredible way to show how important one is over the other, and mixing them in your mind almost, but still making it to where you're telling the history of a place while also interring its legacy upon you. Are we merely performing to try to be immortal? Is that the only reason that we do things? Is because we're reaching for beyond? I think it's an unanswerable question, but it's one that I think everybody should ask themselves. Do we have something within us that moves on, or are we in charge of creating that ourselves? Daniel Mason's descriptive ability throughout this novel is incredible, and I really enjoyed how he used such minor details about the forest and about the plants and animals and the human interactions that were observed throughout the story in order to continue to highlight this history, this transcendence of this place, not only in those major events that are catalyzed by human beings, but in the fact that this place goes on forever despite things that move through it. Now, I think that a meaning of a place is lost to time, as all things are. We never stand in the same spot. We never live in the same house. We never exist in the same space that we once did. Everything has always changed from one moment to the next. And we're never the same people from one moment to the next. One moment always has the potential to alter the next one. One page always has the potential to change the way we view the next one. And that's amazing to be able to capture that feeling through words on a page. Let me back up just a little bit. I don't think that the meaning of a place is ever truly lost to time. I think it's simply just changed into something else. Whether that's giving life to the beings around it, the plants and the animals and the people that may wander into it, or whether it's being a home, being a sanctuary for people to make a living or to really be what they were meant to be. I think that meaning is captured well here because of the fact that this is not simply a 20-year span of time or a 5-year span of time or even a 100-year span of time where you get one or two generations, but you get hundreds of years of this. So you're able to see that this meaning, while it is perhaps lost to time from what it originally was, changes into something else and maintains that sense of giving life just in a different way. It was as if the past were written everywhere upon the land, and the size of stones found in the snaking walls, which told whether the land was used for crop or pasture, and the rotted hemlock that registered its ghost beneath the stilted roots of silver birch, the eastern white pine that owed its bifurcated form to the marauding of a weevil in its sapling hood, the many-fingered trunks that testified to browsing deer long dead. I mean, that little section is just incredible because of, one, the description, but two, the way that he's drawing a picture of a past that's seen through what is there. Right? He says the size of the stones determined whether it was used for crop or for pasture. If things were broken by one form or another, by the way the trees look to show what had come before, the long dead deer that had come before it. As I mentioned before, it goes without saying that a book like this that really delves into the influence of time on a certain place must have description that transcends time itself and the space that this book is inherently flitting through, but I think this novel absolutely does that. The lightness of time should not be underestimated. Time's gravity is really only felt when the scaffolds of our reality are thrown off their tracks. We realize that something's off, something isn't what it normally is. When we can hear it speaking softly to us, and all we have to do is open our ears to listen. I also think it's really quite incredible how Mason was able to write the story of a place, put these characters in it, and then really make us not care too much about these characters, about what they go through. Yes, it's important, and yes, we see and feel for them in the moment, but we know that everything will pass, and we know that this place is going to preserve itself for the next generation to come. And I feel like that's really a success of this book, is making you feel the perseverance of this place and time. And yes, we can even think about this in terms of our life, how things happen to us, but we must move on through time. We must make it to the next moment, because that moment could be the one that changes everything for us. When you make it to the end of this book, I think the ending will change the way you view everything that has come before it. I would say for sure, do not sleep on this book. This book really provides a sense of mystery, a sense of unknown, and reaching for the beyond that a lot of books that I've read just don't capture. I don't want to compare it to anything. I think its environmental aspects remind me of The Overstory by Richard Powers. But its structure is not really like anything that I've read in a while, aside from things that are more experimental and innovative and inventive with the way that they do things. I think that it's incredible that this kind of book has the reach that it has, and it's quite a popular book, and I do feel like takes a good amount of energy and mental effort to get to the point of what Daniel Mason is trying to accomplish with this novel. But I think that it's worth it, and it's one that I am very excited to reread in the future. Knowing what you know at the end, going back into it is going to be a much more rewarding experience to reread. Now, I haven't read Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude, but I have a feeling that this book is similar in the way that it goes through time as generations, and not focusing on a couple characters for the entire book, but spanning a long period of time. I have a feeling that this book is reminiscent of that. Strong enough for me to mention in this video. I'm definitely going to put that on the list to read very soon, coming off of this. For anybody that's on the fence about either picking it up or reading it, I would say for sure this is worth the read, and I would recommend it to just about anybody. Just know that as you read, if you feel any confusion, to continue on and find the paths that converge. All right, y'all, that is it for my review of North Woods by Daniel Mason. Hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, please make sure to like the video, subscribe for more content from me, and leave a comment down below if you have read this, and if you liked it, didn't like it, and anything that you recommend that I pick up next. My next video, I think, is going to be Women in Translation for August, which is Women in Translation month, where I pick a couple books that I'm going to read for next month. So if you have any recommendations for that, definitely let me know. But otherwise, I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of your day, evening, night, wherever and whenever you're watching this. And I'll see you on the next one.